So the question is, can MPC2 projects open up inside of MPC3? The quick answer to that is yes. If you press on the load, it will load. But then some of these projects might actually not load correctly onto the MPC3. We're going to go over this, going to explain to you why that happens and maybe some tips on how to get around that. Before we go ahead, I just want to ask you if you could subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It would really help out. Let's see if this year I can get to 100K. And let's get to the video. So this is a project that I did a while back. It came out on my beat tape and it was created on MPC2. So MPC2 is on my laptop and the MPC right here is MPC3. I've opened up the same exact project on MPC3. First of all, I just want to show you how some of these sequences are on my MPC2. I'm just going to play the sequence to you, and then I'm going to play the exact same sequence on the MPC with the 3 OS. Okay, so I'm going to play the first sequence right now. Sequence number 1. So sorry about that little noise there. So you see straight away that is just not loading it the exact same sequence. It is a very similar sequence in there, but there's a lot of samples in there that are not on the original 2.0 project, okay? I'm gonna just quickly jump to other sequences and show you that there's always a bit of a difference between these sequences. So right now I'm gonna play sequence number 2 from the original project. Right? So sequence number 2. So, straight away, you'll see that. And this happens throughout all the sequences, okay? So you notice that there's definitely an issue there. MPC2 projects do not load up correctly inside of MPC3. That's due to the simple fact that you cannot change programs inside of tracks right now. Okay, there are ways of getting around it. You can definitely load up projects from MPC2 into MPC3 correctly, but you have to do a few things to make that happen. Before we go ahead, I want to show you this. So look at how the MPC structure is built so you can understand why some of these projects are not loading up correctly. All right, let's just have a look at the structure of the MPC and why loading up projects from MPC2 to MPC3 might not work. Okay, so we have MPC3 right here. Okay, and we have sequences, sequence 1, sequence 2, 3, 4, and so on, up to 128. Okay, so we have sequences, then we have tracks. Okay, track 1, 2, and so on down to whatever track number. Then we have MPC2, same thing, sequences. Sequence 2, oh my God, sequence 3, sequence 4, and so on up to 128. And then the tracks, 1, 2, 3, all the way down to whatever track number. All right, cool. So what's the difference? Okay, on MPC2, let's start here. You could put any type of program on the track. So let's say you create a program. You can apply, because you can change programs in the track, you can say that this track here can have program 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. You pick the program that you want for the track. Okay, so let's say I've picked program 1 to be on track 1. On sequence number 2, I can say that I want program 5. Sequence 3, maybe I'm using another program and I'm going to say that I want program 10. Sequence 4, maybe I want to get back to program 1. Okay, This is due to the independence of sequences and their tracks. So each sequence is independent from one another. Whatever you put on sequence 1 doesn't necessarily need to be what's on sequence 2. You can always change programs, okay? So I can have, and this is true for all the tracks. I can have this program here again on track 2, sequence 1, and again on program 1. So it's like you say what programs go to each tracks in whatever sequence you're using. And so on. On all the tracks, you're going to have this flexibility of just picking the programs that you want. I might have program 5 here if I want. On all the sequences, all the tracks. Now, this is what changed on MPC3, is that sequences stopped being independent. Now, the tracks that you put on, the programs that you put on track 1 will be the same for all the sequences, okay? Because this now, track 1, is a track that is linear to all sequences, okay? So if you pick program 1, it's going to be program 1 on all the sequences. You cannot go to sequence 3 and say, I want to change this to program 5. It's just not possible. That's what changed. That's what changed the structure of the MPC. Is this thing that some of us are not happy about, is that you cannot apply programs to tracks. You cannot change programs inside of tracks. So if you create a program, that is for all the sequences. And you cannot apply this same program on track number 2. So if you used it here, it's not going to, you cannot use it. You can copy it. You can have copies of programs, of course, but that program will not be used anywhere else, just on track 1, and you cannot change it on sequence 2. All right? So let's just to finish kind of like the idea right here, let's say I picked program 2 here and program 3. You can name programs, whatever. So program 3. Again, if you pick a program on track 3, it's going to be applied on all the sequences. So it's just like looking at it. You can see it as a one track for all sequences, right? Here they're divided. Like this track belongs to sequence 1. This track belongs to sequence 2. They are their own tracks in their own sequences. That's why I say they are independent. Sequences are independent. You can build a whole project just inside of one sequence and then build another one inside of another sequence because they are independent. All right. So what happens if I have, let's say, if I have I created a project on MPC2 and it has program 1 on track 1, sequence 1, and then program 5 on sequence 2, track 5. How does that open, especially if it has different samples? It doesn't open like that, right? Because what happens is that MPC3 is going to pick the sequence 1 and is going to put program 1 on all the sequences. So this program is going to be pushed down either to another track or is just going to be set in the background. So if you follow that, you understand why some of these MPC2 projects just cannot load correctly onto MPC3. That change that happened of the programs not being assigned to tracks, or you cannot change programs inside of tracks, that is the reason why, when you load up MPC2 projects into MPC3, they're going to have some issues. Now, this all depends how you've been working with MPC2. If you've always kept the same program on the same tracks in multiple sequences, most likely your projects will load up just fine. If you're like me that, you make a beat on sequence 1, then you go to sequence 2, you just create something different with different samples, different programs, most likely these projects will not load up correctly inside of MPC3. That is the only reason, okay? There's also the option when you load up MPC2 projects inside of MPC3, you'll get this window asking you, do you want to load all the sequences or do you just want to load one sequence? Well, the perfect thing is to just load up one sequence. If you're like me and you make like multiple beats on multiple sequences in one project, if you just change programs on the same track, you want to load up just one sequence. You kind of pick out the sequence that you want to work with and you load that up into MPC3 projects. Okay. If you're like, if you normally just on the MPC, you just create one sequence on MPC2, that sequence will load up just fine. So, you know, that's what's happening in the background. If you have always very clean projects, you never change the program on the tracks and so on, they will most likely load up correctly. If you're like me, you're always changing programs inside of tracks and you have different programs, most likely it will be a mess. Although I have to give a shout out to Akai because I've noticed that they've been trying to minimize this when you load up all the sequences from projects of MPC2 into MPC3. I noticed that Akai has been trying to make this actually load up correctly and they've been doing a great job. As of now, you still have all these issues. I saw some questions about this, is that like, will it mess up my MPC2 project file? No, it won't, because once you load up an MPC2 project file into MPC3, you're going to have to save this new project file. So it's not changing your MPC2 project file, because you're going to have to actually save. Once you open up on MPC3, you're going to have to save that new project. It's an MPC3 project now, so it's not going to change your previous project. Okay, so you're safe right there. You can try these things. It's okay. Load them up and try and see how it sounds. It might actually come up sounding just perfect. If it doesn't sound perfect, then you know what it is. That was it, man. I hope that this helps. And please subscribe if you haven't already. Help the channel grow if you want more content like this. Okay, thank you so much. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.